you all join this lecture. This is a part of our online lecture series, Science World Exploring Space to Benefit Mankind Education Program, organized by the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So thanks our Global Engagement Office organized such wonderful lecture. So my name is Zhang Ming, the head and chair professor of Department of Biomedical Engineering, Faculty of Engineering, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Can you hear me? Is that clear? Okay, thank you. So tonight I want to share with you my views on bone and joint health on Earth and in space. Okay, so let's briefly introduce myself first. So I'm the chair professor and head in Department of Biomedical Engineering, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University currently. So I got my bachelor degree from Beijing Institute of Technology and a master degree also from Beijing Institute of Technology and a PhD from King's College London University. I joined the Hong Kong Polytechnic University in 1995 as a postdoc fellow, lecturer, assistant professor, associate professor, professor, and chair professor. So currently, I'm also the council member of the World Council of Biomechanics, president of the World Association for Chinese Biomedical Engineers, the chairman of Chinese Society of Rehabilitation Engineering, and vice president of China Association, China Assisted Product Association. So our team has done a lot of work related to human musculoskeletal system. So our work has got the Polio President Award for excellent performance in research, and also got an award from Minister of Education China called Nature Science Award First Class. So my research interests include biomedical engineering, biomechanics of musculoskeletal system and body support design, rehabilitation engineering, and sports engineering. Okay, the topic tonight will be bone and joint health on Earth and in space. Now, bone and joint health is very important for our healthy life. If any problem happen for our bone and joint, not only cause a pain, but also affect our passion to do exercise. If people stop doing exercise, then the other system will has problem. Okay, that's why we say bone joint health is very important for our healthy life. I will ask a few questions to start my talk tonight. So first, what are the difference in biomechanical environment on Earth and in space? So that's a key point I will discuss tonight. So you may say, no air, no oxygen, no air pressure. Those problems can be solved if people take the spaceship, so we can have the cabinet fulfilled with air and oxygen. Okay, but another problem is no gravity. This is a big issue I want to discuss tonight. So you have learned physics. So on Earth, we have a gravity. So the gravity, we call that G, is 9.8 meters per second square. That indicate every 1 kg mass product, or the object, will have a 9.8 Newton weight. So this force will be caused by attraction of our body by Earth. If you on Moon, the gravity will reduce to 1.6 meters per second square only. So that's indicate 1 kg mass only have a 1.6 Newton in weight. Now, if in space, the gravity will close to 0. That means no weight. we call that weightless. Now, how does gravity affect our bone and the joint? So we may start from understand the second question. How big are human joint force on Earth? Now, for example, if a person standing by a single leg, the single leg support, and if our body weight is W, then the supporting force by ground will be W to keep our body in balance. Now, my question is, how big the joint force? For example, this is a hip joint. What is the joint force between bone and bone? How big of this force? Is it smaller than the body weight, equal to the body weight, or larger than the body weight, or much larger than the body weight? So what do you think? So this force, maybe the answer is much larger than the body weight. Okay, why? Now think about when we're standing in this position. So our upper body weight, if the center will be here, if do not have a muscle force, this body will rotate. So our muscle force must be applied to make this body in balance. Okay, if this muscle force, this is a supporting joint, very much like this level. Okay, the supporting here, the weight of the body here, then the muscle force here. So according to in your physics, this muscle force, the moment produced by muscle force should be balance the moment produced by weight. Okay, then the muscle force should be weight times B divided by A. If the B is 3 times of A, then the muscle force will be 3 times of body weight. Okay, so remember our joint force is much larger than our body weight, sometimes 3 times or 4 times of the body weight. Now, when we standing on Earth, our ground supporting force equal the body weight W. If we are walking, okay, if we are walking, our heels drag to the toe of the ground reaction force will follow this curve. Okay, normally we say when we are walking, the maximum ground reaction force will be equal 1.2 times body weight. It's slightly larger than the body weight. If we are running, this force will be about 2.4 times of body weight. You can see the peak around 2.5. Okay, is subground reaction force. Now, how about joint force? Take the knee joint of the example. If we are walking, the joint force will follow this curve. Those are the measurement results from some experiment. Okay, somebody put the transducer inside the knee, then to measure what is the force. If this person is 75 kg in mass, then the joint force is more than 3,000. So we often say, when we are working, the knee joint force is roughly 2 or 3, even 4 times of our body weight. Now, how about running? If you are running, the curve will follow this one, and you see the peak force is more than 5,000. So when we are running, the joint force at the knee is about 5 times of our body weight. So I give you this information, I want you to know our joint force, no matter standing, walking, or running, is much larger than our body weight. That indicate our body will be applied force much larger than body weight at the tissue of bone. Okay, next question. What are the problems in space with the micro or zero gravity? So if we call that weightless. Okay, if no weight, what is the problem for our bone and joint? Now, many research has done, for example, research from NASA or from some China research institute. They find significant adverse effect of long-term weightlessness include muscle atrophy. So this is muscle weakness, and deterioration of the skeleton. Skeleton mean bone. Deterioration mean weak. Okay, so the clinical word is osteopenia. Osteo mean bone, penia mean lack of the bone. Okay, this is a Chinese name. And osteoporosis. Okay, the bone porosis mean a lot of holes that indicate the gravitation force acting on astronaut's body would be much lower on Earth. This will cause bone to decrease in mass or in density. Astronauts lose an average of more than 1 to 2% bone mass per month if they spend time in space. Now, you may say 1% is not very much, but actually 1% reduce in mass will affect on the quality of our bone a lot. I give you a comparison data. For elderly people, normally the bone loss is 1% for a year per year. Okay, so if you stay in space, it's 1% per month, a lot. This is one finding. Another finding is the lower limb lose more bone than the upper limb. So why? Because our lower limb will take the force a lot when we standing, working, running to support the body weight, but the upper limb not on the earth. Okay, the load on the upper limb relatively small. So if you're in space, the lower limb load reduced too much, then the bone will gradually reduce in mass. Okay, other significant effects include a slowing of a cardiovascular system function, decreased production of red blood cell, balance disorder, eyesight disorder, and change in our immune system. So that means the microgravity environment affect our body a lot. So tonight we will focus on our bone and the joint. Okay. The next question, why do astronauts lose bone? So why no weight, no gravitation, but we lost the bone? Now, remember, from mechanical point of view, we have very important principle. Human tissue has ability to adapt its mechanical environment. Does not move. So, okay, now this slide tries to show our bone, these are the trabecular bone. It's dynamic. They change all the time. So this trabecular bone is the microstructure of our bone. They change all the time. So we have a very important laws called Wolff's law. And Wolff found those principles in 1892, very long time ago. Bone is laid down where needed and where resorbed where not needed. That indicate if you don't give the force to our bone will disappear gradually. If you want to strengthen our bone, you have to give the force to our bone. Okay, this is very important finding. Now, how our bone can do so? This is depend on cells. So if you see the microstructure of our bone, those trabecular bone, there are many cells laid down on the surface of our trabecula. Those bone cells can be named osteoblast, osteoclast, and osteocytes. So osteo means bone, blast means building, clast means destroy, sites means sensing. So that indicate there are three major type of cells on our bone surface. Okay, so those bone cells will regulate our bone change. So for example, those cells on the surface, and when we give a mechanical loading, our stress will decrease. If you don't give the load, stress will decrease. If the stress is too small, then the osteoclast will go there to destroy the bone. If you give the stress on the tissue, then the bone osteoblasts will go there to build the bone. Okay, then to form a bone surface. So those circles will keep going. So osteocytes sense the mechanical loading, osteoclast destroys the bone, osteoblast will build the bone. That's why our bone can change the shape all the time. Okay, now those process we call that remodeling. So the remodeling also can be used to explain why our bone has so complex shape. You see, this is our femur, a very complicated shape. Also, the tissue structure, the content also quite different. This is related to mechanical stress. So this shows stress distribution. That means high stress, we have a good quality of the bone. Low stress, the bone will be disappear gradually. Okay, also can be used to explain why our musculoskeletal evaluate from sitting to standing and then sitting again, because our loading applied on our musculoskeletal system will change. When they're using tool, they stand up. When they're using computer, they sit down for all the time. Then our muscles skeletal will change to this way. Okay, the next question, how do astronauts avoid bone loss? Now, definitely, we need to give the force. If you don't give the force, there are no weight, no supporting force. Our bone and joint, no stimulation. So if you see the video from CCTV, you can see this is a chamber in our spine shape. So there are a lot of tools there. So people can do some running, do some cycling, like that, pull up, etc. Many different exercise or activity. So try to load it on our body. However, you may ask, if in space, if there are no gravity, how can we apply the force to our body? Now, you can see the lot of connective element which try to load it our body. If we don't have those elastic material here to hold our body on the treadmill, you cannot apply the force on our body when you run, because the grounding supporting force will move body up. Then you cannot have a second step. So we have to hold our body to apply the force on our body. Okay. So next question. Why do astronauts need sitting, not walking immediately after landing? So if you see the video, when the astronaut return to Earth, somebody have to take care of them, ask them to sit there, don't walking. The reason is they have been in space for a long time. They need to adapt a new environment when they return to Earth, because the gravity on Earth and in space has big difference. Now the bone loss in space need some time to recover. They need time to restore their environment. Okay. Now, what are problems for bone and joints under loading on Earth? I just mentioned in space there are no loading, no weight. Then the weight on the body too small. The big problem is bone deterioration, bone loss. What is the problem when people on Earth with the joint force, with very large joint force? The problem can be divided into injury, deformity, and tissue problem. So-called injury, that means if you apply too much force, our bone can be broken. Our connective tissue, like the ligament, can be broken. Or our joint, our bone can be dislocation. For example, the ankle sprain. Okay, then the bone will change the location. This is an injury by exciting or large sports load. Deformity. So people have a good structure, but some people got deformable structure like those structure. Then the loading applied on body will much big. Or spine shape change, like those curved spine and another curve okay, in different view. Or the problem with the foot, for example, Hollis walking, flight foot, all those is the structure change. Other problems related to tissue problem include those Achilles tendons problem, infection on tendon, infection on fascia, and heel bursts. Or diabetic foot, osteoarthritis, so that means some infection on those cartilage. Or OP, we just mentioned OP is osteoporosis, loss of bone. So on Earth, also the problem, loss of bone, particularly for those elderly, or the bone cancer, the tumor. Okay, those are the problems. Now, how to understand this problem? How to avoid those problems? So biomedical engineering work a lot on those related questions. I try to quick explain to you what we have done related to bone and the joint. So our undergraduate program now changed to BST scheme in biomedical engineering. The code will be 2600. Include training biomedical engineers, prosthetics and orthotics. Prosthetics mean to fitting artificial limb. Orthosis mean assistive device for the people with disability. I'll explain that later. So recently we opened new program called BME plus ADA. ADA means artificial intelligence and data analytics. It's very smart for digital development. Okay, another is BME plus IE. I mean innovation, E mean entrepreneurship. So training you to open company. Okay. Now, what is biomedical engineering? Biomedical engineering involves engineering, life science, and medicine. So the combined were called biomedical engineering. So try to apply engineering principles and design concepts to medicine and biology for healthcare. It's a bridge between engineering and medicine and healthcare. There are many sub-areas for biomedical engineering. Those include biomechanics, prosthetic device, artificial organ, medical imaging, biomaterials, biotechnology, tissue engineering, neural engineering, biomedical instrumentation, bio-nanotechnology, signal processing, rehabilitation engineering, medical and informatics, clinical engineering, biosensor, and medical biological analysis. A lot of sub-area in the biomedical engineering. Okay, biomedical engineer have a lot of contribution to our body health. Those include research and training. So our education try to do prevention for disease, screening of disease, diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation from baby to aging. Okay. Now, polio BME research have a 4 thematic area, so that our main research direction. One is medical imaging and biosensing. So try to get the geometry of our body and try to sense something. Okay. The second area is the molecular and cellular engineering. The third one is the neural, musculoskeletal science and engineering. That means nerve system, muscle, and the bone. The fourth is the prosthetics, orthotics, and rehabilitation engineering. Prosthetic, orthotic try to fit some device to help our body. Okay, rehabilitation engineering to help those person with disability and elderly. So BME innovation for healthcare from micro to macro. So some research talk about the whole body. Some research understand some organ. Some research try to understand the tissue in tissue level or in cells level in the microstructure of body, even the molecular or DNA. So I quick give you a few examples related to our thematic area. Those include medical imaging and biosensing, using photoacoustic to get the imaging of our blood vessel, using ultrasound stimulation to change our brain, okay? And the 3D ultrasound imaging to get our curve, the shape of our curve. And for some medical imaging for our eyes, even the blood vessel block. And some sensing, we try to develop some sensor and to rapid and very accurately to detect some virus, and using gold nanoparticle to detect the DNA, etc. Okay, those are related to sensing. So the molecular and cellular engineering include those microsensing, include some biomaterials and tissue engineering, and include some using stem cell to kill some disease, for example, for NEOA, using mechanobiology to see how our cell respond to mechanical load, and some ion channel for disease. By material tissue engineering, try to use engineering approach to create some tissue, and we develop some hydrogel scaffold, then to form a tissue for bone and for skin. We also work on neuromuscular skeletal science engineering, develop a lot of computational model to understand the load transfer. I will talk more later. Prosthetics and orthotic rehabilitation engineering, for example, when people got a stroke, they cannot move their hand or leg, then we have some rehabilitation program to solve those problems. Or for some curved spine, we can use orthotic treatment to reduce those curves. And our students often go to some countryside to help those person lost the leg or some person with a special need. So we also work on modeling related to footwear design, prosthetics design, sitting, lying design, and implant design. So aging is a big problem. So aging population is a big problem. So we also work on engineering for smart aging rehabilitation. We develop a lot of device for aging. Now, in the following a few slides, we try to explain our musculoskeletal system. And I think if you learn anatomy in your physics, you know our body include bone, muscle, ligament, tendon, cartilage, etc. So our 200 bone form the joint, and the joint will have a different joint. Some joint bone and fuse together. Some has very large movement, like our knee and the hip or shoulder. And we have a lot of connective tissue to fix those bones. Otherwise, our bone cannot work. Okay, we have a muscle, which can controlled by our neural system, then to make the force to our bone. So those muscles will be controlled by those sliding mechanism. When the tissue relative sliding, then our muscle will be contract, then the force will apply to our muscle to bone. Now, our musculoskeletal is a very excellent structure. For example, the joint alignment. The alignment that means if you see, if a person stands in a good posture, the joint, the major joint will be in the line. Then the body weight will transmit through the joint, then the movement will be very small. Or if we view from frontal view, you can see this very symmetric, and this is a good alignment for our musculoskeletal system. If not, for example, like that, then our joint will have extra loading. Remember, I mentioned before, muscle force will produce very large to keep those balance. Okay, and if you're standing in this way, or if our spine got the curve, then the loading will change a lot. Or if our leg is not aligned properly, this is called O shape or X shape, then the extra loading will applied on our knee joint. Another important for our system is a synergy. So our joint have a good synergy. For example, if you see this is normal lower limb, this is a X shape, this O shape. But if you check our foot, O shape always connect with the flat foot. So then the distribution on foot pressure distribution will be very unique. But if this is X shape, normally with a high arm. Now we have very strong tissue. We mentioned before, we have 1.2 times body weight applied support by foot. Then the joint will have very large force, 2 to 4 times of body weight. For example, Achilles tendon, if we are working 3 times body weight, if you want to break it, you need a very, very large force, maybe 10 times of the body weight. We are working every day. We can have a work around our Earth for 208 circle. Okay, actually, many things affect on our health. The first one is sports exercise. You need to understand our tissue has the ability to adapt its environment. So we need to do exercise to give the load to our bone and muscle. Otherwise, our tissue will deteriorate. So we need to do either static or dynamic to train our different muscle. We have to be careful the intensity and the injury. So if the intensity is too large, it may damage our tissue. The duration and the fatigue, if you're working too long, then our tissue will fatigue. Fatigue is a big problem for our musculoskeletal system. So you have to avoid fatigue. Sports regulation and safety, protection and prevention. Now, the second issue is very important is the posture and the health. So our posture will affect on our musculoskeletal system. So if you're standing in a good way, so our muscle will align very well. If our musculoskeletal, or for example, if you keep a wrong posture for a long period of time, then the musculoskeletal become a curve. Or for example, if you sit there in not properly, then the bone structure will change. Or for example, some people like to carry the bag by one side. If you carry one bag by one side for a long time, then your curve spine may change the curve. Or for example, if you wear shoes, for example, high heel shoes for a long period of time, then the tendon may shorten, then the musculoskeletal also be changed, okay? Standing posture. Now be careful. The posture for the short time is no problem, it's training. But if you have a one posture for a very, very long time, it's become a habit, then the musculoskeletal may be damaged. So another thing is the body support is also affect on our health. For example, you wear the shoes and some orthoses, lying, sitting, all those support devices will change our loading inside our body. So you have to be careful to choose a good shoe, to choose a good support for each person with some special needs. So those support also affect on our health. Now, to understand those problems, we have done a lot of biomechanical study. We develop a biomechanical platform using experimental study. So if you go to our lab, you can see we have a device to measure the body shape. We have a device to measure the motion. We have a device to measure the ground reaction force. With the computational model, we can calculate all the joint force, joint loading. Okay, we also have a device to measure the foot supporting pressure distribution, shear stress, or muscle EMG, that means electromyography, okay, to understand the muscle movement, oxygen consumption, etc. Those are experimental tools on our lab. Now, experimental study can give some information, but it's not enough. That's why researchers do a lot of computational model. So try to develop a musculoskeletal model based on medical image, either MRI, CT, or ultrasound. Then using our motion analysis system to drive the model So very much like those model, you see the model can move, follow the person. Okay, because the marker move, we can capture. Then the signal we are sent to those model. We call those motion analysis data. We call that a Vita-driven model. But those model only give some motion information. If you want to do biomechanical study, we need to do second level study to understand the muscle force. We call those muscular skeletal model. Then when we move, we know those muscle force, how big the muscle force and how big the joint force. Then we can using those information to be boundary and loading condition to develop a finite element model to see what is load transfer inside the tissue, what is the force between foot and support, even the microstructure, what is the force between bone and cells. Okay, we also work on sports engineering. So sports engineering in our department is a key topic. So we're using our model developed to understand fencing, for example, okay, how the fencing, or when you do fencing, what is the muscle force to control our body? Or those are boxing on Tai Chi. With using our software, we can understand those motion and then to understand the muscle force and the joint force. Now, I further explain more about the foot and ankle. This is my research direction. Foot and ankle is very important to support our body. And Da Vinci mentioned, human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art. There are 28 bones, many joints, ligament, and soft tissue. So this foot have very good structure. We call that arch. Okay, those arch structure, like the bridge, can carry the large force. When you give the force, the load will transfer piece by piece. And those arch also is a dynamic arch. That dynamic arch allow us to energy transfer, to change the stiffness, and to reduce the vibration. For example, this is a big plantar fascia, very much like a spring. When you load it, the spring will be stretched, energy will be restored there. Then when you push off, the energy will give to you that you can work fast. So very much like dynamic arch, okay? And also our foot have very nice function. When you turn to one side, the foot become rigid to take the load. When you turn to other direction, the bone become flexible, then allow you to adapt different surface. And also arch plus the very good plantar pad can reduce the vibration. Okay, our foot also is a villar structure. So this plantar fascia allow to rotate about this joint, pull the arch up. We have very strong ligament. I mentioned before, these Achilles tendons, and 3 times body weight when you are working. If you want to break, you need many times force to break that. We also have a very good ankle locking mechanism we call mortise. You see, this is wider than post area. When this contact here, the joint will be locked. When those contact here, the bone will be relaxed. That indicate when your foot contact the floor, your ankle is relaxed. When you push off, your ankle is locked to allow apply the big force. Okay, if you wear the normal shoes, you can do that. If you wear high heel shoe, your ankle never be locked. Then sometimes damage the ankle. It's not stable. Now try to understand those mechanisms. Our team developed a computational simulation. Try to understand what is loading inside the foot. Okay, you see this is a very complicated model. There are a lot of muscle ligament. We can see the force, the color represents stress and strain, how big the load when we are working, what are the relative movement of the bone. So we're using our computational model to design some foot support, for example, the insole. Okay, some people like the total contact insole. some people like to wear MBT shoe. What is MBT shoe? You see, the plantar surface is not flat. You cannot stand in stably, but you have to move. Then you keep training your muscle. Or try to understand the high heel shoe. Okay, many people like the high heel shoe, but sometimes the high heel shoe will produce extra loading on our foot. So our purpose, try to design a good foot support. And we also work on the insole design. So many people like those special insole. Okay, we try to work those insole for person with a disabled or to athletes. Okay. Now, high heel shoe I just mentioned. If you wear the high heel shoe, some people believe that change the alignment, make the people beautiful, but extra load will applied on our foot. So we develop this model, try to see how our shoe fit our foot. Then when you are working, what is load? Okay, we also develop some model for the disabled foot, for example, Harris walking, flat foot. We're using this model to understand or to help our clinic treatment, no matter orthotic treatment or surgical treatment. For example, flat foot, Harris-Wagen foot, and ankle OA, so damage the joint, we have to do the total joint replacement, etc. We also develop model for running. So some people running like using the rear foot landing, some people using the forefoot landing. So we develop this model to understand how the load transfer. We develop this model, try to understand the taping. Many people want to using taping, different taping to release the load on plantar fascia. So we're using our model to simulate that to see how those taping methods can reduce the loading on musculoskeletal system or plantar fascia particularly. We also work on the computational model for the sleeping. Okay, not much time. Okay, for sleeping and try to develop a good sleeping support. We remember if the too stiff or too soft and too high or too low, it's not a good support. So we try to work on those computational model, then we can develop a very good sleeping support. We work with a company to develop a very good pillow, and they make a lot of profit on that. And based on those musculoskeletal model and experimental measurement, then using those computational model to understand the load transfer. And the purpose is we need to develop a pillow and a matrix. We can have a relaxed sleeping. That's very important, particularly for elderly. We also develop a model for sitting. That's important. And if you're sitting in different posture, particularly in front of the computer, then your musculoskeletal will have a different loading, and the sitting support should be changed. So I try to using this slide try to show some lower limb prosthesis. This is happened in 2016 Paralympics in Rio. Okay, you see those are amputees. They using engineer design prosthesis to run very fast. Okay. Now those are using engineering technology to solve medical healthcare problem. A typical example, so using smart material, very creative design, and solve some body interface problem, then we can design a very good product for clinical application. Now, biomedical engineering did a lot for elderly and for disabled person, from clothing, eating, and housing and moving. Okay, there are a lot of devices to help for dressing, eating, to change the location from one place to another place. And people also develop a lot of devices to move the body, for example, excellent or smart wheelchair, and those are exoskeleton training device, etc. And the prosthesis is artificial limb for lower limb, for upper limb, and orthosis for lower limb, foot, and the insole of different part of the body. Those called prosthesis and orthosis. And we're also using 3D printing technology. This is a recent technology for prosthesis and orthosis, and those are using 3D printing to develop many different type prosthesis and orthosis.